Hello, friends and family. Welcome back to the Sober is Dope podcast. And today I want to introduce my special guest, Kate Vitela, who's a RN and sobriety coach and also the host of the Rewired Sober podcast. Kate Vitela is a certified addiction and mental health nurse and the founder of Rewired Sober. As a sobriety coach and podcast host, Kate is passionate about helping individuals rewire their brain and thrive in recovery. With a foundation in medical expertise and deep empathy, Kate offers transformational coaching to those struggling with addiction, supporting them in building tools for lasting sobriety. She is a true advocate for mental health, harm reduction, and long term healing. I'm really excited to bring Kate on the podcast today to talk about neuroplasticity, her coaching practice, and sobriety from a perspective of a health coach and a nurse, a registered nurse. And this is really exciting for me. So, with no further ado, I'm going to bring Kate in on the Sober is Dope podcast. Friends and family, welcome back to Sober is Dope. As promised, I have Kate Vitela on the podcast today. I'm super excited. Kate and I go way back. We were introduced by Elise Bryson from the Sober Curator. Shout out to Elise. Elise, we love you wherever you are. And listen, everyone out there, this is a really important episode for me because it's rare that I get someone that I'm close with on the podcast that could talk to us about the brain and sobriety and just from a technical but also a human perspective. Kate is a RN. Kate has a podcast called Rewire Sober. And you guys know I'm a neuroplasticity nerd and I just talk about brain health. And when we're in addiction, and we're going into our recovery, 90% of it is healing both our nervous system and our brains. And when we bypass that and we don't really pay attention to how important that is, it sets us up for relapse because we're just not taking care of one of our biggest assets, which is our brain. Kate, welcome to Sober is Dope. It's a pleasure. How are you feeling today?
I'm awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
I love it. I love it. All right, Kate. So I have a few questions, but first, I just want to get into it with you because we have a lot to cover. Your tagline is rewire the brain and thrive. What does rewiring the brain mean to you in the context of addiction recovery?
Yeah, so, you know, our brain is so smart. It is this incredible, I feel like God gave us this incredible device in our minds, in our heads, right? And there is ways through cognitive behavioral therapy, motivational interviewing, all the things we do in recovery, in verbal processing our stories, um, being in safe places with other people, being in meetings, learning new things. There is the capacity for all of us through neuroplasticity to rewire and to reset, recover. And so I focus on a variety of topics and sort of aspects of coaching that I feel like are super important in rebuilding because so much of your reward system in your brain is hijacked through active addiction. So when you quit drinking, it takes time for all of that new neural circuitry to form, right? And new habits, new routines. And so I feel like I'm able to talk through that with people and also keep it real, without sounding like a textbook.
When I was in recovery, I was aware of a lot of the damage I caused to myself. And I had the privy of understanding things like meditation. I was fortunate enough to go to therapy and stuff like that. And this process over the years, I'm 12 and a half years sober and I'm still healing my brain. I'm very sensitive. If I have a long night and I don't go to bed, I get dizzy. I'm just like, oh. So I'm aware, I say that to say this. I'm aware of how addiction really kicked my butt and how important healing is to the brain. So I'm
Mhm.
really excited about that. But before we go any further into our nerd stuff, your sober date is February 10th, 2018. All
Yes.
right, all right. That's what's up. So can you tell us a little bit about your drug of choice and a little bit about your recovery journey? Can you give us a quick brief of that and what brought you into sobriety and recovery?
Yeah, most of my issues are alcohol. There was some marijuana around the very end. Um, but I basically, my drinking got so bad by the time I was 38. I got sober at 38. But my drinking had gotten so bad that, I had tried to smoke pot instead of be stone cold sober. But I was going through withdrawals if I didn't drink. I was shaky and sweaty and puking. I had a lot of the drunken consequences. I got a DUI. I had financial issues, marital issues, health issues. And I tried to smoke weed instead. And I basically got in trouble by the nursing commission because I had been smoking weed. And I tried to like fake a drug screen with fake pee. And there's a lot more to that story, which I tell on my podcast. But I'm giving you the Cliff Notes version, right?
Okay.
So I got reported to the nursing commission for tampering with a drug screen. It's actually a funny story, but it was not funny at the time
Okay.
when I got fired from my job and I was risking losing my nursing
Wow,
license.
yeah, that is
I
scary.
mean, the nursing commission does not play.
No, I can imagine.
They came down on me hard. So all these consequences started piling on me. And at 38, it was like I was up against a wall. And um, after starts and stops and trying to hide from this and run and do everything I could to avoid getting sober, I finally surrendered and I started going to 12-step meetings. And, the rest is sort of history. I don't really go to 12-step anymore. I don't go to AA, but it was like once I decided this is the way that I'm gonna change my life and go in this direction, then I didn't look back. And
Right.
so
I can relate.
it's been a miracle to be 7.5 years sober. I mean, it still feels like a miracle. I mean, I was a rock bottom drunk. Like I was risking losing it all, right? By the time I
Wow.
got sober.
Wow. Can you give us a little quick insight on your rock bottom story?
Yeah. So I think early 30s is when my family started noticing I drank too much. It became apparent to my friends, I was blacking out at parties. I was just being completely irresponsible. And in 2014, I got a DUI. But I literally I brushed that off that everybody gets a DUI. Everybody gets pulled over, everybody gets in trouble. I was in pharmaceutical sales at the time in Portland, Oregon, and I was unable to go back to pharmaceutical sales because they wouldn't lease me a company car with a DUI. So there was a point right there where you would think, okay, that's her rock bottom. She's going to quit drinking, right? She's lost this part of her career, her privilege to drive a company vehicle. Not only that, but DUIs are super expensive. Um, but I didn't get sober until 2018 because from in those 4 years, I probably started and stopped in terms of, trying to stay sober, dry essentially, so many times. And I told myself, I was watering down drinks, I was dumping out alcohol, I was trying all the tricks, lying to myself. But my drinking got so bad that I actually became a person who started drinking in the morning.
Right.
I was shaky in the morning and sweating, and um, I had to go back to bedside nursing because I couldn't work in pharmaceuticals anymore. And I don't think I lasted at any job longer than like 6 months. I
I
mean,
love it.
I couldn't function, you
This is
know?
good stuff. This is good stuff. So I want to go a few ways here, but can you please like break down a little bit of why? All right, so I try to explain to people how our dopamine receptors work and how when we do drink alcohol and we become dependent, we kind of damage that and develop this need for the drug of choice to replace the dopamine that we're damaged
Mhm.
and lost. That cycle, the shakes, the morning. Are you with millions of people out there right now are going through this and they don't understand how common it is when you realize maybe I have a problem. I woke up and I feel so off. You're not a bad person. You're not waking up to drink because you want to party. You're almost waking up to drink as medicine because you like, I need to feel better. And it's this signal that we get. It's like something in our brain is telling us to go grab the drink again.
Yeah.
Can we talk about that a little bit? Because I think that gets overshadowed so much.
Yeah, I actually did a whole educational video on this. which probably is boring for people to watch, but I kind of refer to it as the A-B process of alcohol. And essentially, because alcohol functions in our brain like in a two-part process. So we first ingest the alcohol, we feel the relaxation, you know, there's neurotransmitters that fire like GABA and glutamate that help to make us feel relaxed and chill and good. And then as time goes on, the B process of alcohol kicks in, and it actually kind of counterbalances that relaxation feeling. So then we start to feel anxious. And that is why you're waking up at like 3 in the morning with that feeling of anxiety. It's like the beginning of withdrawal. But because your brain, like I said, is really smart. So it's always trying to balance everything out. So if you throw in a downer, if you drink a depressant like alcohol, your brain is going to counteract by increasing neurotransmitters and stress hormones, adrenaline, cortisol, that would counteract that and level everything out. Because the
Wow.
ultimate goal of the brain is to keep everything as level as possible, right? Homeostasis, as they say in like
Yes.
medical speak. So when we continue to dump a depressant into our brain, naturally it counteracts by making us more anxious. And then we drink again and we get stuck in that vicious cycle.
Ooh, let's go, Kate. Let's go, man. This is what I live for. Can we talk about how the nervous system is affected by alcohol also, since we're talking about the depressants and how that links to depression?
Yeah, I mean, I think what I talk about most with clients is when you're drinking heavily, your nervous system is wrecked, right? And it is so off kilter. And you are in your stress hormones, your cortisol, your adrenaline, those are elevated as your drinking progresses, which lends to increased fight or flight, your increased sympathetic nervous system. And really, it's hard for your brain to stay balanced. It's hard for you to process information, to analyze, to evaluate. It's hard for you to calm down because your nervous system is just jacked. And I think the other thing that people experience is the reward system in your brain is jacked. So normally when you eat a scoop of ice cream or have some chocolate, you get a little hit of dopamine from that and you feel good. But alcohol is such a massive flood of dopamine that it kind of like overpowers the brain, like for lack of a better term. So you can't feel good unless you drink alcohol. Like you kind
Whoa.
of stop that natural production because you've become desensitized. Now you need tons, right? You have to flood your system with dopamine. And so and that also explains why in early sobriety, you kind of feel nothing.
Hmm.
Your first year of sobriety kind of sucks. You kind of feel like shit. Nothing really makes, ooh, can I swear on this podcast?
Yes, you can.
Oh,
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, you kind of feel like shit. Like I work with people in early sobriety, right? 6 months, under a year, and they're like, I don't feel better. And it's because you're in that period of prolonged brain rebalancing where your pleasure centers haven't fully like leveled out yet. So normal things are not going to make you happy like they used to because you flooded your brain with dopamine for so long. In the form of alcohol. You can do other things to flood your brain with dopamine: sex, gambling, shopping, drugs. Drugs are another big one.
I always talk about how to repair the dopamine receptors because your dopamine receptors get damaged over time. And when you find your sobriety, your brain starts to begin to heal and the dopamine repairing process starts to happen. The receptors what do you recommend people do to help their brain heal naturally through the dopamine receptor process? Like, how do we heal dopamine receptors?
Yeah, it sounds really basic and corny, but it's everyday things that we do to stay whole and human. Rest is a big one. Good sleep hygiene. Getting an adequate sleep because for let's face it, most of us in active addiction weren't sleeping very well.
Right.
Hydration, basic hydration and movement. That we say movement is medicine, move your body, and food. food is a really good one, that you're eating, a lot of protein, complex carbohydrates. Like all of that actually helps your brain to heal and rebalance over time. It sounds like really corny, like an infomercial, but those basic things
No,
over time.
that's
And it just, what they say in AA, time takes time.
time
And,
takes
they say
time.
that for a reason.
I
There's really
love
no
it.
way to fast forward the process.
Right, right, right. The AA has a way of just kind of like finding those little one-liners makes so much sense. They're good at that. All right. So, and I also another tip I tell people is nutritional yeast helps beat vitamin B12. There's clinical evidence that vitamin B12 helps. Tyrosine-rich foods,
Mhm.
which again you said protein is really good, and getting a lot of rest, meditation can also help. I love it. I love it. So, all right, can you now look? I want to talk briefly a bit about your podcast. All right. This is now Sober is Dope community. Don't feel bad. I need you guys. You guys are allowed to go listen to Kate's podcast. Okay. This is good. Listen, I'm not a medical guy. Maybe I should go back to school. I study all of this stuff as a passion to help heal people, but it's really refreshing when I could bring professionals on the podcast for you guys. So everyone in the Sober is Dope community, please go support the Rewire podcast and let's get going and go support Kate. Tell us about your podcast, what made you want to start it, and some of the things you talk about on your podcast.
Yeah, when I first started it, which was January, so it's only been going since January of 25. And when I first started it, it was called You've Been Selected. And that is because when I was in the nurse monitoring program, and I explained this all on the podcast, but every time it was my day to go give a random UA to prove that I was still clean and sober, it would show up on my phone on this app in red letters saying, You've been selected. And over time, I started to reframe that as, okay, I'm here to thrive through this, and I am here to help other people. And this is bigger than me,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
And so it was originally called that. I found that it was hard for people to find that it was a sober podcast. And, I went through this period of time when I didn't have Rewired Sober as an Instagram, and everything was on my personal Instagram account, Kate Vitela. And I felt like I got distracted and I got lost in the sauce a little bit. And I started, I was posting stuff that wasn't sober related. It was all messy. My podcast was named something different. I got really obsessed with like vanity metrics and seeing how many likes I could get. I felt so lost. And so I streamlined everything, started the Rewired Sober Instagram and the podcast. And I also kind of started streamlining my messaging a bit more because I knew what I was doing was helping people, but I didn't really know how to say, like, put words to it.
Right.
So when I would go on other people's podcasts, they would say, Well, what do you do? What's your coaching method? What's your style? And I would kind of draw a blank because I didn't know how to verbalize, well, I just talk to people.
Right.
It's so much more than that, but I couldn't explain why it's working either. And so all of my studies of neuroplasticity and addiction, I'm also board certified in addiction, all of that, it kind of helped me put some emotional literacy, I guess, if for lack of a better term, to what I'm doing and um, put me a little bit more in the right direction. So the beginning of the podcast, the first, I don't know, 15 episodes, some of my stories, some of other people's stories, but it will continue to evolve, I think, as I evolve on the journey and also as my coaching evolves. The
Right.
longer I coach, the more tools I pick up as well.
Right. And how's the coaching business going? Is it thriving?
Yeah, it's different than I thought in a lot of ways. There's a lot of marketing involved in getting your name out there. And especially as a medical person, one of my coaches says medical people we get trapped in the excellence trap because we think, oh, because we're a nurse or because we're certified in this or because we have this level of expertise, that people are just going to come running to us and or you have a lot of letters behind your name, but that's not really necessarily the case.
Hmm.
And so you still have to do marketing and get your name out there. you know.
Right, but we need look. I want to talk to you offline more about your coaching program, how I can help promote it, because I do believe we need people that do have some competency and skills that could really help people that's really looking for the help get in the right direction. I mean, you got too many people that's just waking up. I'm 1 year sober. I'm
Yeah.
motivated. I want to be a coach, and I'm totally against that. I don't care. I'm not trying to say that
Yeah.
people in early recovery are not qualified, but I'm a big proponent that you need to do the work long enough to know that you have it under control before you start teaching other people. We didn't launch Sobers. I didn't launch Sobers dope until I was 6 years into my recovery. I spent 6 years mastering my recovery, understanding my addiction, and healing before I even spoke to anyone about my recovery. The only thing I would do is once a year post my little 1 year, 2 year, 3 year. And on the 6 year, God knocked on the door and said, "Are you not going to share all of this wonderful things that you experience with the world?" I was like, okay, okay, all right, I'm going to start a podcast. But I'm totally in support of what you're doing, and I think it's awesome. And I'm so happy. And listening to you, your stuff is so exciting. So, Kate, I definitely want to get you on more episodes because you can't unpack neuroplasticity in one episode in the brain. But this is how I want to close out. Can you talk to us about the connection between mental health and addiction, what they call comorbidities, right? And why it's important for someone in the treatment to kind of handle the underlying issues with their mental health as well as the addiction. I think people tend to just say, "Oh, I went to rehab and I go to AA," and then they eventually relapse because they're not dealing with pain, grief, trauma, the brain, and the mental health aspects. And then at the end of that, can you tell people where they can find the Rewired Sober podcast and how they could get in touch with you?
Yeah. So I'm a big proponent on mental health. I'm a mental health nurse by training, and so often we drink because we're self-medicating anxiety and depression. I had horrible insomnia, and that was part of the reason I drank. I was also an anxious person, So we got to get to the root cause of why we're drinking. And some people may need an antipsychotic, an antidepressant, a mood stabilizer. That's okay. It's important that we unpack those mental health issues as well. I can talk about mental health forever, and so you can find me on Instagram at Rewired Sober or Facebook. The podcast streams anywhere you get a podcast, and but it is fairly new, so hopefully you rate and review it, help me
Yeah,
along a little bit.
yeah, we will help you. And listen, being new, good. Sober is dope is six. Well, we're going on our fifth or sixth year, I think. So it takes time. I hope you win it for the long run because I think you have all of the chops to dominate the field. I'm one of your biggest advocates and fans. We would love to be partners and support you in any capacity. Sober is dope is on a mission to help a million plus people understand their addictions truly. I think how I got to 12 and a half years sober is because I was aggressive with healing myself spiritually, mentally, physically, psychologically. I attack my mental health. I deal with my trauma every day. And when you do all of that work, the last thing on your mind is going to be a drug of choice. But when you don't do the work, you can find this preoccupation with it, and then you kind of suffer a bit. So hang in there. We're really excited, and congratulations. And to everyone out there, please support Kate on her journey. And I love it. So listen, neuroplasticity is real, everyone. The brain can heal. That's a good thing. The damage you cause from your addiction is not permanent, not in all cases. Hopefully, you didn't go that far off the rails, but there's always hope in recovery. You could become a better version of yourself. I'm living proof. Kate's living proof. We do the work every day. So listen, don't give up. Go in peace. We love you all, and we'll catch you on the other side. Peace and love, everyone.